Howdy folks, this is Dan Summers with the district office here in Roseburg. We're here with part one of a two-part series on how to make these plastic corrugated turkey boxes. Now what we're trying to replace are the classic waxed cardboard National Wild Turkey Federation boxes. The reason that we're trying to replace them is you usually going to get one, maybe two uses out of them. They are cardboard, so once they get wet, they're going to fall apart on you, and you cannot wash them. And we're looking for something you can wash and reuse, and something that's more economical, so something that we can produce for cheaper per box than one of these. Alright, we're going to start with a quick parts list of everything you're going to need to make these boxes. So let's start out with the tools required. You're going to need a couple of drills. You can do it with one cordless drill as long as you've got one big enough to fit the hole saw. So you're going to need a hole saw to make the holes for the breathe holes for the boxes. You're going to need a drill bit to drill some holes for our tarred line. You're going to need some box knives. The ones that have the adjustable lengths is very beneficial. A writing device, pencil works great. You're gonna need a jigsaw for cutting the plastic. It's very fast. You're gonna need a caulking gun. You're gonna need a rivet gun. The adjustable size, you can find these fairly cheap at most hardware stores. You're gonna need a straight edge. I like to use just a metal ruler. Some clamps, if you're doing it by yourself, help stabilization and ensure that you're doing a straight cut. You're going to need some duct tape. I've been using Gorilla Tape, but any high strength industrial duct tape will work. You're going to need backing plates for your rivets. You're going to need rivets. I've been using 3/16 by 5/8 grabbing, and this ensures that you're going to have plenty of grabbing area to go through your plastic. You're going to need Loctite adhesive. It's just a glue. It sets in 12 hours at 60 degrees. Might take longer if it's colder than that. 3M spray to go under your duct tape. You can use a variety of strengths. I've been using the 90. We're going to test out the 40 as well. Number 42 tarred seine line. You can find it at LFS Incorporated. It's 100% nylon, but it is waxed or tarred so that it does not absorb water, and it's very durable. Keychain clips. These are for closing the door. You can use different sizes, whatever's cheap or most abundant. Works great. You can get these. We also found these on bulk. Fender washers. This will keep your tarred line from ripping a line in your box. You can also find these in different sizes as long as your backing is larger than your hole that you created. All right, so last piece that you're going to need is you can order these 4x8 sheets of 6mm plastic. They look just like this. You can get them in different sizes or different thicknesses. The only size we've tried is the 6mm. All right, so the first step is take your old turkey box, one that's not in any good shape, will work just fine. Open it up by removing the staples so that you have this tab end on this side, and then you've got just your straight edge on this side. And what we're doing is we're essentially just tracing this pattern onto our sheet, and that's gonna utilize all these same flaps and everything. So we start by putting this tab end towards me and squaring it up with plastic. And you can see that our turkey box is a little wider than 4 feet, but we're not using these tabs here because we're not doing any folding. We're locking our door shut with our braided line. So I like to square this up as best as possible. You can see that I'm a little off here, so I'm going to shift it this way a little bit to the left. Get that nice and square. Everything looks good. Take your writing device and you can just trace the box. And you want to try to be as precise as possible, but I have noticed that if you make a little error here and there, it's not going to make that big of a difference. Mark your breather holes while you're here. And really, you can put these breather holes wherever you want. I just use the same design that was on this box. All right, so now you can see that we've got our entire box traced out onto plastic. Our next step will be to cut it out using this portable jigsaw. You can find them at any hardware store. You probably could use a stationary one, but it's a lot easier to be able to move it around free like this. What I like to do is have a table big enough, and I like to hang the end that I'm going to cut off, which is here, off the table first. That way you end up dealing with a smaller sheet. You can place something heavy on this end, or you can just clamp it down. And that'll just help keep it from moving. All right, so after cutting, this is what's left. It's roughly like a 2.5 by 4 foot sheet of plastic. We're gonna save this, and we'll see why in part 2. All right, so now we're just gonna continue cutting all these lines, and that's gonna cut out the shape of our box. First couple boxes I made, I actually used a box knife to cut them out, and you can do it. It's just so much more time consuming, and your lines aren't perfectly straight. The jigsaw works wonders. Tabs come off just like that. All right, so our next step is to drill our air holes. You can really do this at any stage until you fold, but I like to get it done now, out of the way. So as you saw before, I marked all these X's where the holes were. And you can use any size hole saw as long as a turkey's head cannot fit out. If it gets head out there, then you know there's potential for injury. Alright, so our next step is to cut all of our scores, and that's where the folds are going to be in the box. I got my straight edge here, and if you're doing it by yourself, it really helps to clamp it to make sure that your straight edge doesn't move. So I'm placing my straight edge right in the middle of the creases. As you can see, between these two is where my crease is going to be sideways. So place that as best I can, centered. Go ahead and just place down that side, and then the other side. Now what I'll do is I'm going to use my box knife, and this is where having the adjustable length is very beneficial. So you can adjust your length. Because you only want to go through half the box. If you go through the entire box, like if I were to go all the way through, I'd end up cutting a slit and my box would fall apart. So you only want to go through half. And what's that going to do in this box is it's going to allow a fold to be there and surprisingly enough, the one side of the box is strong enough to withstand quite a bit of force. So this is part of the delicate process. Just make a very soft line first, kind of get where your score is going to be. Try to stay on that straight edge as best as possible. And like I said, if you go too deep, this seam will be altered. And cutting it this way, because you see the corrugations are actually running up and down instead of sideways. We're cutting against the corrugations right now, so that's what makes it hard cutting these seams. The other seams that go with the corrugations are a lot easier. And see how that's just going to pop just like that. Just like that. So this is going to be one fold of your box. You can see here I got a little bit off my line, but that's all right. All you got to do is just clean that up just a hair. And that'll work just fine. And you can see I did not go all the way through the box. I only cut that very first layer, and that makes a fold. Now when you're doing this step, you want to make sure that you put all of your folds or all your scores on the same side of the box. If you put one that's on the other side, what you'll end up doing is you're going to have to score the other side as well, and then you'll have to utilize the duct tape to really hold that fold together, which you don't want to do. One more. Now this piece here is our tab, and this is what's going to wrap around and actually glue to the far end of the box. Just like that. We're nearly halfway done. Lengthwise. These ones, like I mentioned earlier, are a lot easier to cut because they're going with the corrugations, not against. On these ones, you can kind of pick where you want your folds to be. It's pretty apparent. You're going to be, here's going to be a line, here's going to be a line, here's going to be a line, here's going to be a line. You can move them either way a little bit. It's not going to make that big of a difference. You would rather have these folds smaller than larger. If they're larger, then what will happen is your box may not want to close all the way because you're going to have a sheet there that's a little too big. And these ones I can usually get by without clamping because they're shorter cuts and they're going with the corrugations. Just like that. The corrugations are like, I don't know, I'd say about 1/8 of an inch wide. So some of your cuts may not be perfectly straight, but your fold will be, if that makes any sense. You can see here, so I'm bending it and I didn't quite make it through this first layer. So I'm gonna just go through and score these very carefully. Like I mentioned before, It's very important to make sure that all of your scores are on the same side of the sheet. If you do some of these on the other side, you're going to be very upset. Takes very little pressure to cut this. If you end up applying too much, you might sink your knife all the way through. That's why I'm also using my straight edge, not only as a straight edge, but as a guide, a fence, if you will, to make sure I'm not going too deep. All right, so after you've scored the outside of the box and you've got your air holes drilled out, what we're gonna do is we're going to reinforce every seam on the inside of the box with duct tape. And underneath the duct tape, I like to use a 3M adhesive spray. And what that's gonna do, that's gonna make that glue or the tape extra sticky. And it's gonna give us a little bit more reinforcement to make these seams last longer. We haven't had one fail yet. But this is just an extra precaution. When you're spraying these, it doesn't take very much. You're just going on each and every seam. Now another important step, before you place your duct tape, you want to make sure that the glue is tacky, which if it's warm, it does not take very long at all. We're going to go ahead and generally if you're in a shop or in a summer day, the glue is going to be tacky on your first seam before you finish your last seam. And again, you can use any high strength industrial duct tape. All right, so we have our seams on the inside of the box all taped up. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna fold this over. The tab is gonna be on the inside of the box. We wanna make sure that the box is as flat as possible. We can ensure that it'll stay flat by just putting something heavy on the face of it, kind of like this. Pull that in. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 4 holes in here, and these are going to be for our rivets. I'm going to put one here, 2 in the middle, and then 1 on the outside. So now that we have our holes drilled, and you see it's through this side, our tab, and the back side, we can go ahead and open it back up. I'm going to place my glue on this side here, because that's where my outside of the box is going to be. Just one solid bead will work just fine. And again, this is the PL Max Premium construction adhesive. So how this is going to work is we're going to close it like this. And I like to stand it up. It's easier to put together when it's standing. And how this is going to work is we're going to put our rivets through this side and just into our tab. We're not going to go through the outside. And this acts as the stapled fold that was on the cardboard box. All right, so now that our box is starting to take shape, our next step will be to add our seine line from one side to the other. And what that'll do is that will keep our flaps securely closed. How we're gonna do that is we're gonna tie a tether line between these two air holes. And what that's gonna act as is just something for our line that comes over to clip to. Now, when you're putting in your tarred line on the back side that's going to tie to your anchor line, I like to put my knot on the side that's got our folds with the gap in it. If you put it on the other side, what's going to happen is if you don't put it low enough, your flaps are going to hit your knot, and that's just it could get in the way when you're trying to put turkeys in the box. So if you just put your knot on this side, you'll never have that problem. So that's what I'm going to do right now. Center it. Ream it out a little bit, and you do top and bottom. So what we're going to do is we're going to shove our line from the outside in. Make sure that's good and tight. That's going to come out on the inside right there. I'm going to take a fender washer. I'm going to slide that down. Now I'm just going to tie a big hefty knot on the end of this. I like to just do something super simple. Give it some twists. And another thing is this tarred line makes really good knots. Once you tie a knot in it, it does not like to come undone. So there you have it, just a big beefy knot, something that cannot come through there. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure my distance. From here, so it's going to roughly go to right in there. I like to give myself a little extra space for knots, just like that. So I'm going to do this on the top and the bottom, and both of my lines are going to be on the same side. All right, so now I'm going to tie on my tether line, or anchor line as I've called it. Just shove it through here. And you could do something like putting in 2 more holes with some more fender washers, but this saves time and money. And this line does not have to be super tight. I like it snug this way, but that'll just determine on how tight you tie on your clip. Put that off right about there. And then what I like to do is I like to slide this knot just in the gap here, just so you can't see it and it's less likely to get caught on things. Next, what I like to do, so you take your keychain clip, depending on what variety you're using, I like to clip it on there. Fold my lids in, bring my line over, and you want this tight, but you don't want it too tight. If it's going to be like that, the turkeys are not going to be able to get out of there. But I like to get it fairly snug. I'm going to lose some of that tightness tying my knot. And then you just tie a good secure knot. I'm not the best with knots, but anything will work as long as it does not come undone. This is not a knot that we're going to be untying ever again, so it can be a little complicated if you like. Just like that. And so what I found is, say that's a little too much slack and you didn't really like that, what you can do, you can unclip here, and you can tie an additional knot. Make sure this is all the way out. You can tie an additional knot back here. And what that'll also do is it'll keep the turkey from, or your line from being sucked in there. But that'll just take up a little bit extra space. Now your lid's a little bit more closed. And we'll do this exact same process on the bottom of the box. All right, so here's our completed box. It's got breather holes, got our cables attached with a tether line. This box is ready to go. The thing I really like about these boxes is they disassemble very quickly. Stores. After making our box, as you saw earlier in this part, well, we had a 2.5 by 4 foot sheet of extra. Now we're going to make smaller tom boxes using 2 of these sheets. That's good for a single turkey, which we'll be going over in the next video.